Yeah. What's up, everybody? It's the Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast. We are your hosts, platinum producers, Arkatech Beatz. I am Jugrnaut. My partner, Mike Trauma D, is on vacation. So we're just gonna make it do what it do for today. If it's your first time here, welcome to the podcast. Basically, what we do here is we provide industry tips, music industry insight for artists, producers, musicians, etc. We have over 20 years of experience in the music business. We have worked with everybody in hip hop, new and old. And that's us, right? So what I wanted to get into today, we get a lot of questions about how do I get on, right? And, basically people are talking about what is an A&R in today's music industry, right? How do I get the attention of a music industry A&R and how do I get on? And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to explain what an A&R is and what an A&R isn't, or versus what an A&R used to be versus what an A&R is now, right? And then how can you position yourself to gain the interest of today's A&R, right? Because it's a different game. The things that A&Rs used to look for before isn't what they're looking for now. So, let's get into this. Let's really talk about, what is an A&R, right? So the first thing people ask me, so what is an A&R and what does it even stand for, right? So the word A&R stands for Artist Repertoire, right? And the primary function of an A&R in historically has been to essentially identify talent, cultivate talent, and then once you've cultivated the talent, get the talent signed, and then there's the process of the A&R of getting the artist the best songs to basically be put out for a commercial marketplace, right? So once the A&R identified the talent, once the A&R cultivated the talent, once the A&R signed the talent, it was the A&R job now to make sure that the artist had the best songs, best songwriters, best producers, engineers, etc., and to put them in that environment to make sure that the music came out essentially fire, right? We want to make sure that we had the best producers, songwriters, etc., so that the songs could be commercially viable. So that was really the main goal of the A&R. So back in the days, but I don't want to go back too far, it's sounding like a dinosaur, but A&Rs were more music driven in terms of they had what they would call the ear, right? An ear for music, right? Most guys were into music. The ones that weren't into music per se was still able to identify talent, probably based off of the way that other people reacted to the music, right? So sometimes you could tell, if an artist has something by the way that people react to the artist. But traditionally, the way that I was introduced to it was about a little bit of both. It was having an ear for music, and then also at the same time being able to look at an artist and see how people interact with an artist, how an artist's music resonates with people. And you can sometimes take those things and you can say, this artist has something, right? That's what the A&R used to be for us when we were coming up and when we were doing A&R at a major label like Loud Records, etc. We had to basically identify the talent, right? And say, okay, this is what's going to be next, right? And as producers, we would always put on an A&R hat, like as producers for what we do, we always had an A&R hat on because it was up to us to identify the talent before it actually blew up, right? And if you look at our resume and if you look at the artists that we work with, a lot of the artists that we work with was very early on, right? Kind of on the radar, or artists that weren't on the radar. And we were working with these artists because we just kind of saw something in them. And this would be for a lot of artists that may not have even had deals yet, right? But we were seeing artists with other artists, and some artists would be in C tier artists at one point. And then what we would do is we would kind of listen to the music, look at the artists, look at the work ethic, look at how the artist's music was resonating, not just with us, but with other people. And then kind of use that to make an assessment and say, okay, this person might have something, right? So when we were looking at those things back in the days, that's the things that drove us to say, okay, this artist has it. This artist should be cultivated. We should get this person in the studio. Then let's put some music together. Let's see what they can put down. Let's see what the artist comes with creatively. Does the artist need help creatively? Does the artist need to have more time to develop their own sound, right? And that can take some time depending on what people want to get into. So that's how we would look at A&R from a historic kind of standpoint, right? Now when we look at A&R is different. A&R is more data driven, right? It's not based off of that fuzzy feeling that you used to have when you would see an artist or you hear an artist and you'd be like, man, that artist is dope. And it's not based off of that anymore. It's based off of all analytics, data, algorithms, right? Where we're taking what the artist is doing with their music, because now everyone has the ability to release their music. So if you're an artist and you're saying, I'm hot, I should be signed, okay, the first thing is you should have music released. That's the first thing, right? If you are who you say you are, right, you should be able to, at this point, get on the internet, find some tracks, because those are all over the internet at this point. You should be able to get those downloaded. You should be able to record, because now everybody can basically record on their computers. If you're not able to do that, of course, you have to find a studio to do that and get it done. And you should be at a point where you're releasing music somewhere, whether it's SoundCloud, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, something. Music should be released at this point. And then what happens is this. Once the music starts to get released, then that's when the data starts. Once the music is released and it starts to get out there and then the data starts to move around, this is how you kind of get on the radar of today's A&R, right? If your music is being placed on playlists, if your music is being moved around on social media, if you're able to promote your music on social media, if your following is growing, those are some of the data analytics that these A&Rs are going to be looking for. For us specifically, in our back panel for our distribution deal, we have the analytics. We have access to analytics for not just the music that we release, but also for music for artists that we may follow. And we're able to look at these analytics and we're able to basically make a determination on the trajectory of that artist, right? This is where it's gone. It is no longer the situation where we're just listening to you and saying, damn, this guy is hot, this guy got bars, this person could sing, so forth and so on. That's just a part of the situation. The other part of the situation is us now looking at the data. What's happening with the data? What's happening with the songs? Are the songs being put on playlists? If they are being put on playlists, how long are they staying on the playlist? What's the follower count? Are the followers growing? Are you getting more followers on Spotify versus Apple Music? Is it going across different platforms, or was it just kind of a local type of thing? These are some of the questions that we start trying to look at, and then we start drilling down. We start looking at the frequency the music is being released. We start looking at how it is being engaged by the audience, and you can see all of these things in analytics. You can see which markets they're actually busting in, or which markets they're not working in. And again, this is how we make the determination whether or not to invest in an artist at this point, right? We can look at the data. We can see that, something is going on or nothing is going on. Or we can look at the data again and say, okay, this might look a little bit fabricated, right? Because there was a lot of that going on maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, where there were some fabrications that were going on and people weren't really privy to the fact that you had all of these services that you can buy in the backside, right? Which would be fake followers, fake streams, fake comments. Like anything that's on the internet right now, you have to kind of question it because everything can be fabricated, right? So there are ways for us to look at the analytics, look at the algorithms, and to kind of determine what an artist is slated to become. You can see some run-ups on maybe like YouTube, etc., right? Excuse me. You can see some of that stuff happening. Sometimes an artist will start to get some traction. You can see that sometimes. But the data is there. So the difference that we see now is there's a difference in A&R from what it was versus what it is today. And a lot of the requests that I see coming through us is, hey, check out this music. We don't do it that way anymore. Me liking how an artist sounds is no longer the barometer for whether or not this artist is going to be successful, right? Whether or not the music is dope, again, that's not a barometer for success. Because it takes so much more to get an artist over the hump, right? And it's not just about how the music sounds or how the bars are, etc. It's really coming down to the frequency of music that's being released. How often is the artist engaging with their fan base, and are they able to connect with their fan base and grow their fan base, right? And that's part of the new situation in terms of dealing with of being an A&R in today's business. Today's A&R is essentially you have to be a data analyst. It's not even about music anymore. So in today's business, it's like it's not about how music sounds almost. It's about how music is basically received by an audience, right? And then how does the audience interact with that music? And then that has to be basically recorded in terms of reporting and metrics so that we can see the likelihood of us being able to get a return on our investment. And that investment right now for us might be time. For others, it might be money. And we have to be able to look at those things and be able to see if something is really viable, if it even makes sense to even invest in that, right? Too often am I seeing is, oh, my music is dope. This is dope. Da, 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 blah, blah, blah. Okay, you say it's dope. I like the way it sounds. What do the people think? What do the metrics say? Right? What do the metrics say? What do the YouTube people say? What do the Spotify listeners say? What does the TikTok listeners say? Because all of those things are going to be in the metrics. We're going to be able to see everything in the metrics to see, okay, this person gained X amount of Instagram followers in X amount of time. This person got X amount of Facebook followers, if anybody still uses Facebook. But you see where I'm going with it. That's the only thing that's going to get you any attention. Like, because there are people out here monitoring the metrics. We monitor the data. When a person brings an artist to me, the first thing I do is I'm going to pull up the Spotify. I'm going to drop it into the algorithm, or to the data, into the charts, to kind of see what's going on. If I don't see a lot of going on, then there's nothing going on. There's no way for us to really, fabricate that for a long term. You just can't, right? You just can't do it. It's like once you're on the internet, you can no longer hide, right? We can see what's going on, right? We can see if you got the traction, if you don't got the traction. If you do, then it's going to be there. And trust me, people are going to be hollering at you, because we're not the only people monitoring these metrics, right? But that's the way that artists have to think now. Artists have to think, okay, once I put out the music, what's the game plan to get the most eyeballs on this music? What's the game plan to make sure that these fans stay engaged? What's the game plan? All right, that's the only way that you're going to be able to make any inroads with today's music A&R, right? So let's even go a little bit deeper into the situation in terms of, right, what an A&R is going to be doing right now. Because right now, they become research managers, right? They're basically looking at the data and the discovery of new artists, producers, songwriters, etc. They're going to research the artists, and then they're going to basically be looking for different, quantitative information, right? We're going to be going through the artist websites. We're going to be going through the apps. We're going to be using all kind of situations, media-based, chart metrics, Music Connect, right? BDS, whatever. We're basically going to be exploring just different types of music data, right? And trying to construct new methods and trying to really get the insights on the data. So this is what an A&R is going to be doing in today's situation. If you notice, none of it says anything about us going to clubs and going to festivals and listening to music and going to studios and so forth and so on. That A&R essentially no longer exists. We just have to keep it 100, right? And I wouldn't even be surprised if now the position of an A&R is totally automated, right? Because you can create either an algorithm or an AI bot that will basically look for key metrics or key data points and spikes in certain things, and then basically generate a report to tell you, okay, this person is popping here, or this person has a spike here or there. And then you can kind of see those things going on and off. And, I wouldn't be surprised in the next few years that this thing just becomes totally automated, right? And algorithmic, completely AI driven, right? But this is the nature of the game. This is where we are with A&R. Now, there are some places where you may still be able to submit your music for a review, but typically, those situations are going to be paid, right? Because everybody now at this point does not have the ability to listen to everything that comes through. It's very, very time consuming, right? Because we're looking at tens of thousands of songs being released daily, right? So you're in this type of situation where the volume of songs is so much that you're going to have to kind of pay your way to get to the front of that line, right? And this is just the nature of today's music business, right? So when we're talking about A&R, again, it's like we're talking about trying to get your music in front of the people that can make some decisions. But even if I like your music, even if there's an ability for me to make a decision on your music, I still would like the data to support my decision in loving your music. I would like to have some data that shows that your music is being well received by fans. I want that data, right? And I want the data that is potentially not fabricated, right? Because again, we're talking about data that can be fabricated on social media pretty easily. but there's ways for us to kind of comb through that. Now, while we do like how A&R can sometimes can be helped with data, right? There are situations like that where numbers do help. Right? Numbers can also lie, and it's definitely not a sign of quality music, because your numbers can be out the chart, can be off the charts, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your music is really quality. But again, in today's business, I don't even know if that matters. I think they're so centered on return on investment. I think that supersedes anything as it relates to. I think it supersedes anything as it relates to music quality. I think music quality at this point, at 2022 and forward, really takes a second seat to the engagement and the excitement through the fans. If that's present, I think that takes precedence over everything. And the other thing, when you're dealing with data, you got so many different artists and you have so much different things going on. It's hard for us to kind of weed through everything. So again, the objectives is really to find the artist before everybody else finds the artist. But when we're talking about the data situation in terms of A&R now, it's hard. Everybody has the same alerts. Everybody has everything. They're looking at the same signals. So there's really no way for us to get an edge. But I always say this, and this is what we kind of apply to our music production. And I think that I'm gonna give a jewel, something that has helped us in the past, and I think that can help artists today. Typically, artists move in crews. So if you think about it, you might have a crew like, say, Wu-Tang. And you say, well, that's more than a crew, right? Well, let's just say Wu-Tang. But after Wu-Tang, you had different derivatives. Sons of Man or Killer Army, etc. You see where I'm going with it. Same thing with maybe, say, Outkast. Then you have maybe, say, Killer Mike and different situations. Or, you always have rappers that move or artists that move in crews because they typically work in groups. Most oftentimes what happens, the main artist pops off. And then there are people that either run with the artists that also do the same thing, or artists that are, basically working their way up with the main artist that may or may not be signed to the main artist, but have access to the main artist, right? So you would see that a lot happening in Atlanta. That used to happen in New York. If you think about maybe, say, like the Dipset situation, where you may have Cameron as the main guy, and then you have the other guys coming in with Jules, and then Jim Jones, who wasn't rapping for a while, then all of a sudden he starts to become an artist, and so forth and so on, and then that's the derivative of Max B's and so forth and so on and things like that, right? So when you have these type of situations, your goal sometimes as a person that's looking for talent, quote unquote, or if you're a music producer looking for talent, quote unquote, sometimes it's not with the A artist, it might be with the B and C artists, because the B and C artists of today become the A artists of tomorrow, right? And that's just typically how the game works. So what your mission is to do is to identify, okay, I got top tier artists. Who's the artist rolling with? Let's look at their social media. Let's look at their music. Let's see what they're doing. Okay. Typically, they'll have access to the main artist for features. They may have a few dollars from resources from working with the artists, in terms of, most artists will help to give their homies either jobs or, ways to sustain themselves. And some of these guys, if they're smart, they flip it back into their own music. And this is sometimes how you can kind of identify who might be next. It's worked for us a lot. You can identify who might be next just based off of the camp, right? The circle of people. And then all you have to do now is identify who has the best work ethic, right? And then at the same time, like who's releasing the music. Then you can kind of go back and say, okay, they're releasing music at a high clip. Let's look at the metrics. What is it showing? Is it showing that the audience is growing? Okay, you might want to take a chance with that one. Right? Now that goes for an A&R. You might want to take a chance with that one. Or you might go for a producer. Or songwriter. You might want to take a chance with that one. Because this one now is in a system that has a greater chance of being successful, because they're already attached to somebody that's already on their way. Right? So that's one way for you to kind of look at it. If we're talking about identifying talent and trying to get a little bit of today's A&R and tie it into what yesterday's A&R is, to see how you can identify talent and how it works in the new music industry. It's not the easiest thing to do, but again, if you're a new artist and you're trying to kind of get on, again, if you're not associated with X amount of people, that can be a little bit of a challenge. In some cases, you might be able to pay your way in for influence, right? So if you have access to a few dollars, whether it be through work, whether it be through loans, whether it be through credit cards, you may be able to buy some access to be around certain artists that can help to kind of get you in front of certain audiences, and then kind of help to get your music to get listened to. It doesn't guarantee that your music is going to be received well, but at least it puts you in a position for you to be listened to. And as long as you're being listened to, and if you can kind of create a consistency in the releasing of your music, then it might get you into a situation where you might be able to now grow your audience and then start to upsell them onto more things. It might get to shows, and it might get to merch. And then now you're in a situation, in a cycle of business. That's just the vantage point that we see it from. But again, when we're talking about, A&R, that's really where A&R is today versus where it used to be. I hope this information kind of helps so that you can kind of have an understanding of how to position your music, what to do, so that you can kind of get the interest of the people who are watching the algorithms. And again, you have to start thinking more on the lines of what the other side is doing. Sometimes we get so caught up in, hey, I just want to make the hottest music. And while that is a big, important part of the situation, because that adds for your longevity, you have to really think about what it's going to take for you to get your music really marketed and out there, so that it can, garner the attention of not just the fans, but also the industry. Because once the industry kind of gets wind of everything, then you can get the influx of capital that can help you to grow your audience exponentially faster. Again, that's just part of the situation. It's still going to take a whole lot of work. It's going to take a whole lot of research. So again, today's artists and today's A&R it's not yesterday's A&R. It's just, to sum it up, as Fat Joe would say, today's A&R is not yesterday's A&R. It's a totally different type of situation. And like I said, there are some places where you can submit your music. One of the places that we use is like a music X-ray. There are a lot of professionals on this site that are connected to the industry that may be willing to listen and give different opportunities, right? It's just one that we use. I don't want to really call it, a quote unquote endorsement per se, but that is one that we do use and one that we have been partnered with for several years now, that have helped artists to get some sort of get some different opportunities, because we were able to find a producer or two that we were able to put through the system, and if it makes sense, then sometimes we may do that. But again, you have to search for your opportunities. You have to create your opportunities through your music. You have to create your opportunities through your fan base. You have to create your own opportunities. These things are not going to be easy to do. We're talking about a very, very, very saturated music business. And you have to really think about this business in the long term. It's no overnight success. A lot of artists that you see actually getting on and making it, from my vantage point, is probably a 10-year process. It can literally take that long. For those who get on a lot faster, it's like lightning striking, right? The ones that just kind of stay consistent and can release music on a consistent basis and finally get to the pinnacle, that takes time. It's not something that can happen overnight. So I want to give you guys one last tidbit on it. Remember, when you're releasing your music, you want to basically try to get it to as many eyes as possible. The people who are engaging with your music, you want to cultivate those folks. They become your biggest fans. They become your biggest super fans. That's the only way to get your audience to grow. Once your audience starts to grow, the metrics will start to show the growth. Once the metrics show the growth, and once the metrics show that there's an audience for your music, then what you'll start to see is the opportunities coming from the A&Rs. Because again, the A&Rs are only looking for the triggers in the algorithms, the growth in social media, the growth in streams, the growth in playlisting, the growth in comments, and on different platforms. It's not going to work to be exclusive to one platform. It has to basically show that it has some legs to go across multi-platforms. Once that starts to happen, then you might start receiving some telephone calls. Now, did I say telephone? Some calls on your cell phone, whatever. But at the same time, that's the information that you guys need to make sure that you're paying a close attention to. Making sure that you're putting your music out in a timely fashion. Making sure that you're cultivating your listeners. And making sure that you're following those analytics, because everyone else is following those analytics. You can't make it without the analytics. If you don't understand the analytics, you have to make sure that you educate yourself on understanding what these folks are looking for and seeing what you can do to grow your audience. But that's what I got for you today. That's the Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast. You can always check us out at our website at www.arkatechbeatz.com. Follow us on social media at Arkatech Beatz. And until next time, peace.
Arkatech